Week 12 of the fantasy football season, and here's a few quarterbacks I look to drop this week. The first guy, Jared Goff of the Detroit Lions. So Jared Goff, he got off to a great start early in the season, but the last few weeks here, he really hasn't done much for fantasy owners. Most of the bye weeks done now in fantasy football. He's a guy I really wouldn't want on my roster here with the inconsistencies over the last few weeks. Week 9 versus Green Bay, 137 pass yards, 2 touchdowns in it though. Week 10 at the Chicago Bears, 236 pass yards, a touchdown, 14 rushing yards. And Week 11 at the Giants, 165 pass yards in that one. So right now, tough matchup on Thanksgiving Day versus the Buffalo Bills, where they give up the third least amount of fantasy points to quarterbacks on the season. And Jared Goff, I know at home he's been good this season, but on the road he's pretty much been a non-factor for fantasy football. So right now, only 51% of fantasy leagues. As of now, he's a quarterback I would drop. Obviously, he's got a good matchup in Week 13 versus Jacksonville. But for this week here, if you need the roster spots, he's a quarterback to drop. The next guy, Matthew Stafford of the Los Angeles Rams. So Stafford back in concussion protocol for the second week in a row. And to be honest, this season, he really hasn't been putting up numbers, even though in that Week 11 ball game, before he left with injury, he put up a decent ball game. So the last few games here for Stafford, Week 9 in Tampa Bay, 165 pass yards, a touchdown in that one. In Week 11 in New Orleans, 159 pass yards and 2 touchdowns. So right here, even if he plays in next week's ball game, it's going to be tough. No Cooper Kupp, obviously. Kansas City's defense, not the greatest of defenses, but they could go out there and make plays when they need to. So right now, Stafford owned in 50% of fantasy leagues, and with his injuries, with the concussions of late, Cooper Kupp, he's definitely a quarterback I would drop once again this week. In the third and final quarterback I look to drop here, Russell Wilson of the Denver Broncos. So a lot of people ran out there to the waiver wire over the last week or two to get Russell Wilson. He's just not going out there and getting the job done at all. The last few games here for him, Week 8 at Jacksonville, 252 pass yards, a touchdown, an interception, 17 rush yards. Week 10 at Tennessee, 286 pass yards, a touchdown, and an intro. And then Week 11 versus the Raiders, 247 pass yards in that one. So right here, decent matchup on paper at Carolina, but he's a quarterback right now I can't trust. Courtland Sutton's really the only guy doing anything on that offense. Melvin Gordon, they cut him loose yesterday here, was this Denver Bronco team. And right now, nothing's going. So Russell Wilson, another lost season here for him in his first year with Denver. And he's a quarterback I would get rid of, and he's owned in way too many fantasy leagues anyway at over 70%. So that's a few quarterbacks I look to drop here for Week 12 of the fantasy football season.